Hello and welcome to What Lingers, the podcast where we uncover the questions behind people's stories. I am Christian Figueroa.
And I'm Liz Melkor. Together, we're the team behind Storytelling Lisboa, where once a month, 10 storytellers get on stage in front of 200 people and share true personal stories around a theme.
It's always an incredible night, but there is a catch. We always have lingering questions for the storytellers.
In our podcast, What Lingers, we get the answers. In our third season, we jump right in and take you back to that stage. You'll hear the original story told that night.
Then, we sit down with the storyteller for a deeper conversation to explore what lingers for all of us.
Just a quick note, since these recordings are from the actual stage, the audio might be a bit raw.
Okay, so let's get into it.
Okay, so it's the middle of the night and you are not tucked up in bed as normal. In fact, you're in a forest on a volcanic island in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. You've got waves crashing on one side, you've got birds squawking all around your head, and moths are flying relentlessly into your headlamp. So, I hadn't seen another human in hours by this point. So to comfort myself, I started pretending the moths were my friends coming to say hello and cheer me on. And then my headlamp died. And that was just one of many moments that I not only asked what was I thinking, but I asked what the fuck am I doing with my life? So I'm Amy. I turned 40 3 months ago, and this is a short story of my ongoing midlife crisis. So how did I end up on a volcanic island in the middle of the night on my own? So I knew going into 40 that I wanted to do a physical challenge. 2 years ago, I supported my brother through the surgery, recovery and rehab from a giant brain tumour. That was a wake-up moment for me to sort out my physical health. So I'd spent 2 years building a healthy routine, and I was like, okay, I'm going to celebrate this. I thought it would be a marathon. I'd never run further than a half marathon in my life, and so that was already double the distance, super challenging, quite afraid of it. I was like, okay, let's do it. 40-ish Ks for 40 feels good. Then I went on a first date, and that date had just run a 100-kilometer ultramarathon. I was fascinated, I was curious, but I was more into him. And so I found myself shaking to agree to run an ultramarathon for my 40th instead of a normal marathon. Now, I was not thinking with my brain in that moment, but let's just say, I was like, okay, fine. 2 days later, I was signed up to a 120k ultramarathon on the island of Fayal in the Azores with a 28-hour cut-off time, 0 sleep, where you climbed a volcano 3 times, which was above Everest base camp. Sorry, got my notes. Now, even if I wasn't questioning my life decisions at that moment, my friends definitely were. So, why? Are you okay? No, seriously, like, are you doing okay? One friend said that she couldn't even be bothered to drive that far. All very reasonable responses, but just not one that I ever had. I threw myself into the challenge. I had to teach myself everything: kit, nutrition, training, how to climb hills properly, all of it, the works from scratch. I asked ChatGPT what it would do, and it said, get a coach, you should give yourself more than 6 months to do this. So, okay, see ya, thanks. No, thanks. I'm gonna do it. So yeah, I had 6 months to train to take myself from 20 to 120k. Now, I ran my first marathon on a weekend with friends whilst they went to the spa day. I ran my first 50k training run alone on my 40th birthday, so that whatever happened on race day, I was an ultramarathoner by 40. But that wasn't where the magic happened for me. It was in the daily rhythms, the habits. To even get to the start line, I had to care for myself in a way that I had never done. I had to show up for myself with consistency, with compassion, through the doubt, with the fear, and I had to turn my brain from my biggest enemy and bully into my teammate, and that proved transformative for my relationship with myself. So when I showed up on the start line, I was just imagining what a kid would do if you said to them, right, you can go off and run around this island, get as dirty as you want, we'll give you snacks, cake, Coca-Cola whenever we see you, no curfew, just follow the flags and have a good time. They'd be like, best day ever. So I showed up with all these guys who were pretty intimidating, fully kitted out, and I was just there smiling like, okay, let's go on a jog and try this. So when my headlamp died, I took a breath, I looked up to the sky, and I saw a shooting star. At 50 kilometers, when I'd been running for 8 hours through the night, I'd climbed a volcano twice, and my brain could no longer compute that I wasn't even halfway and that I was still meant to keep going. I called my mate, I cried, I sent them a ridiculous video of me crying, saying, this is really hard, but it's really cool. I had an actual mental breakdown, but I was able to laugh at myself. And for a brain whose default has been darkness, the fact that I was able to choose lightness in every step, in every moment, I was able to be present, grateful, and joyful throughout this journey meant I just had the best time. Now, 51 people started it, only 6 women, and 30 finished. I was not one of them. I got pulled at 96 kilometers for bad weather. And I'd said to myself, if I can get to 80, if I can do 2 marathons, I could do the 3rd. I was on a lot of painkillers by then. I was taking coffee and salt pills off anyone who would give me anything. But I was determined. But I didn't get my finish line moment. And whilst in the moment, I cried quite a lot. Pain, sleep deprivation. Looking back, it's kind of perfect, because I thought that would be the whole story. I thought, here goes Amy on a crazy adventure. She definitely wasn't thinking with her brain when she chose this, but it would be all or nothing. Not true, not the story. Actually, it's just the start of a whole new chapter, a whole new relationship with myself, becoming a person I'm really proud of, finally having evidence and proof that I am capable, and a lot more capable than I tell myself. So, my question to you is, if you weren't thinking, what might you say yes to that you wouldn't if your brain was in charge? Thank you.
Hello, Amy. Welcome to What Lingers. Thank you so much for taking this invite to be here and telling us a little bit more about your story. We are super excited to have you here. And we know you from the stage, of course, but could you please introduce yourself for people listening at home around the world?
Oh, yeah, thank you so much for having me. So I'm Amy, I'm British, now based in Lisbon in Portugal, recently turned 40, so flat bang in the middle of my midlife crisis, and just at the beginning of my career as an ultra runner.
Nice. And what is your actual career?
Marketing and brand consultant for startups and early stage businesses.
Okay, cool. Okay, I loved listening to your story. I'm always in complete awe of athletic feats, and especially something like ultra marathoning, and especially from somebody that it doesn't seem like you had a big history as an athlete, or maybe did you? What was your athletic history?
No. Someone asked me that the other day. They were like, have you always been into sport? And I was like, no, I've been into drinking. I'm British. Like, No, I do not have an athletic background at all. This is like a brand new version of me that I discovered or started to build 2 years ago.
So you mentioned something 2 years ago. This situation happened with your brother. Would you mind sharing a little bit where you were and then what happened with your brother, and maybe take us from there?
So I just come through the pandemic in London. I was living alone. I lost my job in the pandemic, so I'd gone freelance and was trying to figure that out. I was single and was really pretty unhappy and needed a change. And so I booked a flight to Lisbon. I'd sort of always talked about it with some friends. And one of them just said, "What are you doing? Like, leave." Like, you have no reason not to try. Then it was within those first 6 months that my brother got diagnosed with a brain tumor the size of a grapefruit out of nowhere. He had no symptoms. I just got a call one day, and he's based in Australia, in Adelaide. And so I was on a flight within a couple of days to go and see him. And suddenly, yeah, life got real pretty quickly in those moments. And it was when I was in Australia, he was almost instantly in the hospital. And so I was staying in his apartment, and I needed something to do whilst he was in hospital and outside of visiting hours, particularly in those first few really scary days after the surgery and when he was in critical care. And so I started doing Couch to 5K again. And I was just like, well, he lives in this beautiful place in Adelaide, right by the ocean. So I just started running up and down. And I remember the day that I got to 4 miles. And I was like, oh my God, I've not run 4 miles in about 3 years. That's huge. That's such a big milestone. But it really running became in that moment almost a kind of primal need to try and find some way to move and process what I was experiencing and going through. Then once he was through the recovery and the rehab, because he had to relearn to walk. So he had to go through that rehab and that physio quite intensively. And it was just one of those moments where I knew that if I was to survive anything like that, I had to be in much better physical and mental health than I was in that moment. I'd come through the pandemic where I would drink. I would fall back on wine quite a lot with friends and the local friends I was bubbling with. I just moved to Lisbon, so I was in that social moment of going out all the time. I wasn't really looking after those basics, and I was just, my life and social life was really revolving kind of around that nighttime alcohol fueled, I don't know.
I very much understand this. I've been sober for 17 years. I stopped drinking when I was 26 because I also drank too much, and it affected my mental health significantly in a way that I didn't even understand at the time. Like I had to stop drinking to then reflect back on how intertwined it was with my daily life and just my existence.
Yeah, completely. And I think that's something that a process that I've been going through these last couple of years. But yeah, I just looked at him in the hospital bed and I was like, I'm not going to survive something like this. I'm physically, I'm out of shape. I haven't been caring for myself, and I just didn't trust myself that I had that resilience or that strength or that optimism that actually proved really critical to his recovery. Was his self-belief and his optimism and the way that he woke up every day with a smile, and he found a way to have joy and just knew he was going to come through it. And I just definitely didn't have the mental strength to do that.
Wow. I mean, it sounds a lot. And it's so interesting how sometimes like life put us these mirrors, like your life changed so much because your brother was having this transitioning moment, and then you were like having this wake up call just by being there, right?
Exactly, just by having a front row seat to it. It started off as definitely like a bit of a trauma response and a way to cope, throwing myself into exercise. And my thought, I remember it so clearly, it was like, if I ever have to survive something like this, I need to be in better shape. And then slowly it shifted to, actually, if I'm going to thrive in life if I'm gonna survive life, let alone when, when one of these unexpected or bigger traumas happen, then I can do this in a much better way than I have been doing it for myself.
It's interesting to hear you talk about it because I'm struck sort of by the interconnectedness of like the physical and the mental strength, because it's like you're watching your brother deteriorate physically, right, with his brain tumor, but you're watching the strength of his sort of like mental emotional way of coping. And I find what you end up going on to do, ultra marathon, I think at first most people think of it probably as a physical feat. But I think ultimately, really, it's like the physical parts sort of, I would say maybe, I don't know, 20% of it or something. I don't know, maybe more. But like your mental game is what you got to get locked in because you keep running until somebody pulls you out because of the weather is awful. I am out at like, if it's like raining that day, I'm like, no, I'm not going to do it. Like that,
Yeah, yeah, it's exactly that. Exactly that. And I say that to people, sure, yeah, you have to have a base fitness to line up at a 100K plus event. You have to have some level of fitness and endurance capacity for sure. But that is absolutely not where I was going to say win or loss, but I don't want to say that because I don't think it's a win or a lose situation, but it's your ability to endure it and what shapes your experience of it is definitely the mental side, 100%.
Yeah. And so training is physical, but also it's really figuring out how to overcome your own so many things. But before we go into that, I wanted to go back because I think this is the thing that I'm excited to learn about. Who was the date? I want to know more about the date. Was he really hot? Tell me, literally tell me like what it was like to meet him and sit down and then what happened after. And was he on the run as well?
Yeah, okay. There's quite a random story. So when I got back to Lisbon, I kept running and I started going to one of the running clubs here. And one really random night when I really, really didn't want to go, I showed up and we just ended up chatting randomly and we were talking about doing halves and he was talking about doing a marathon and that he'd done some. And I was like, oh no, oh God, a marathon, that's so big. I was like, oh, I don't think I can. Oh, but then I was like, oh, maybe. And we had this random chat and then never saw him again. And then 4 months later, I got a message out of the blue saying, is this you? Did we meet back in April? And I was like, maybe. I don't know. It's 4 months ago. And we put it together and it was. And we started chatting and he was based in Zurich at that time. And he was saying that he'd just done a 54K and was now training for 100K. And I was like, oh my God, we were talking about marathons. What's this craziness? And so whilst we were chatting, I started going down a rabbit hole of ultra running documentaries. And I was like, what is this world? What is this sport? And I think kind of what you said earlier, Liz, I was suddenly so captivated by what the mind and body could do. And something that I found so touching or so impactful to me was how humble and egoless everyone seemed, even the best in the sport. It really seemed like there was just this genuine love for running, love for exploring and adventuring, this really honest reverence for nature. And I was suddenly like, oh my God, the human mind and body is amazing. This is incredible. And we ended up meeting. He came over to Lisbon and we had this incredible first date. And obviously he'd just done the 100K. And so I was full of questions and curiosity by that time. But yeah, Liz, like I was so attracted to him. I was like, oh my God, he's amazing. Like he's this incredible sportsman and athlete and he's funny and he's gorgeous. And so we had this great day. And yeah, at the end of it, maybe it was all the hormones or the chemistry or whatever that overtook me. But I was suddenly like, I was only just getting curious about a marathon for maybe my 40th, but I was like, no, okay, I'll shake on it. And we shook hands on doing this 100K race. And I did say to him, I was like, you do realize that it's first date and you're agreeing to me being in your life for the next 6 months whilst we sort of train and agree to do this race. And yeah, so he ended up doing it as well. And he completed it, which was amazing. So proud. It was such a cool moment.
And so did you, I mean, he was living in Zurich, I guess, and you were living in Lisbon. Did a romantic relationship happen or?
It did, but it did and it didn't. It did and it didn't. It doesn't fit into a neatly definable box.
But those are sometimes the best.
Yeah. And I was so grateful to have someone to share it with, actually, and someone who had done it. So I could really rely on him and turn to him on those days where I was like, what am I doing? Like, I can't do this. Who do I think I am to try and take this on? Especially when, honestly, all my friends and then even people here that I know in the running community, it's a decision that very, very, very few people could understand. So I was super grateful to have someone that was doing it and was trying to learn and grow and try this kind of crazy thing at the same time, because without him, I would have felt incredibly alone. And whilst there was incredible highs, there was days and weeks where my whole body, mind, heart was just so empty because it was so tired and it was so overwhelmed by the scale of what I'd chosen to do.
Yeah, it's very intense because at the same time, it's like when you were saying this about the documentaries and these people in nature is like very humble in the sense of you cannot lie to people or you cannot even lie to yourself. Like no one is making you to do this. You're not doing this for anyone. It's literally like a, kind of an encounter with yourself. It's very spiritual if you want to say like, you have to do it because you chose to do this and why you chose to do this. And it's very humbling in that sense of you have to surrender to your own mind and to kind of challenge that.
Yeah. And like, that makes me also think that I've heard, and I don't know what your experience is, but I've heard that some of the people that end up not being able to finish are actually the better athletes. What I mean is they're better physically prepared, but they're cocky. Like they get out there and they think it's going to go so well. And so what they end up doing is like the moment it gets difficult, and this is like all this nice little metaphor for commitment and all these things, but it's like the moment that it gets difficult for them because they never expected it, like they get out of the game. But if you think that it's going to be really freaking hard the whole time, then you're prepared and you've like decided and made this deep commitment in yourself, like I'm going to stick through it. And then I guess that's the beautiful thing is like you have to like tolerate all the waves. And I'm wondering like on this, you were for 96 kilometers and add the elevation. When like already at 96 kilometers, like that's so long. But if you made me do it, I would be on the flat ground. But maybe you could talk about the different waves of emotion, sort of the high highs and the high lows, like actually on the trail.
Yeah, definitely. They were as high as a volcano for sure, and as low as the depths of the ocean. Just one point to what you said, it's really fascinating because I've now gone down a bit of a hole into ultra and endurance in trying to learn and understand it. And there is a big difference between how men and women approach ultras. And the trends is that women will ask so many questions and will be so hesitant about even signing up for the shorter trail races, and they'll take a lot of convincing to even sign up. But then when they sign up, they manage to smash it. And then you get the opposite side, which is males, which are, oh yeah, I can do it. No problem. I'm going to prove it. I've got the fitness. And then they end up not finishing or DNFing, as it's called, because they've overestimated and maybe they've gone out fast. And there are not only the physiological differences in how women can endure much longer, but there's also these mental differences where we have much more sensible pacing strategies, and we have much higher pain tolerance, and we're so much more realistic or conservative around, and women are thriving in endurance sports, but they're struggling to allow themselves to access it. And it's really interesting because one of the things that I'd surprised myself most with is that I took the male approach to signing up, which I've never, ever done in any other remit of my life. I am so stereotypical about keeping myself small, not being willing to try, being really scared because there's a right and a wrong, and I'm convinced I'll take the wrong. And in this instance, I never had that. I was like, just sign me up and let's figure it out and just try and get to the start line. And so I just wanted to raise that, but sorry, that wasn't answering your question.
No, but that's interesting.
It is interesting indeed, because it's kind of a reflection of the whole society and the work force in the world. Like, there is this meme in Brazil that is very funny that, of course, men are always applying to the higher jobs, to the well-paid, even if they're not even prepared. So there's like this little mantra for like women saying in Brazil, like, oh God, please give me the confidence of a mediocre white man to apply to this job, because women are normally more prepared. Just what you just said. They prepare more, they think more about what can happen, they study more, they think about the broader picture.
Exactly. And it's I was reading my notes, and one of the things I wrote down that I was reading through before this call was, and I wrote this after the ultra, very quickly after it, I don't want the confidence of a mediocre white man. I want the confidence of me signing up to an ultra
Aww.
and then doing it. And I was so happy to be reminded of that moment where I backed myself so fully, It's like, okay, that's really cool. So yeah, I mean, that's a good example also of the highs. But during the race, oh my goodness, is it a roller coaster? There's a very popular meme. I mean, I think my algorithm is now pure running, trail running. So in my mind, that's the only world that exists now. But it, like a marathon, you go to hell and you stay there until the end, because you push. It's a completely different effort. You get up to your tempo, your threshold, and you go until you get to that finish line. Whereas an ultra, you go to hell and then come back again, and you go to hell and then go to euphoria, and then go back to hell and then go to euphoria again. On the start line, people were asking me how I felt, and the only answer I could give was alive, because I couldn't even name the sensation in my body. I couldn't even try and begin to put a positive or a negative or an emotion name that we know onto it. I just felt alive. Very quickly, I had a bit of a low, because I found myself, so it started at 10 p.m. And I was so nervous of going out too quickly that I stayed very conservative, stayed at the back of the pack. But then because of that, within 5 minutes, I was in a field on my own. I'd never run at night before. I was trying to figure out my headlamp. I was trying to follow the flags and navigate on my watch and figure out which I should go for. I was getting diverted by cow's eyes, which looked really similar to the reflective flags. And I found myself running around.
Yeah. Okay. Wait. Okay. And yeah, because I'm very naive with the ultramarathons. I was telling Liz, like, I know nothing about this. Like, why on earth would you start at night?
It's a great question. And at first, I was really scared by that, because I was like, oh no, I'm going to be like running alone at night, and that was really scary to me. That was really intimidating to me.
Of course.
But actually, looking back, I think it's a really smart decision, because it means you're at your most alert. And because it's mostly trail, and you're running through like from farmer fields to rocky paths to volcanic rocky coasts to sand, you're running on all these different terrains. I think to be at your most alert when you're probably at the greatest risk of falling over or injuring yourself is actually really smart. And then someone else said to me, the trick is if you can get to sunrise, because if you can get to sunrise, your circadian rhythm, even though it's completely disrupted because it's already like, what are we doing, then kicks in and gives you this energetic boost that you need to then go through the day. So whereas I think if you've been running all through, and some ultras do start in the morning, but then I think that's really difficult, both mentally and physically, to have been running all day and then go into the night when your body is actually, okay, now we shut down. This is what we do at night. We shut down, we don't keep running. So I was really grateful.
And how long? Okay, because I think these runs are like 24 hours or something, right? But how long, your friend that finished, what was his time? And then what was your time when you got pulled?
So he finished it in 24 hours. So the cutoff was 28 hours for this one.
But wait, for 24 hours?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, Christian, it's crazy.
That's insane. It is crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can tell I know nothing about this, but I would never expect that you were running for 24 hours. That's crazy.
I think one of my favorite little things that you said in the story, which I think is so funny, is when your friend is like, I'm not even going to drive that far. Like, that's too far to drive. You know?
I sent it to like my best girls group at home, and their responses were just hilarious. So there was that one. Then there was another one that was like, I want to do the complete opposite for my 40th. They were just like, what? Why? But yeah, because she mapped it. She was like, that's like me driving to Birmingham, and I can't even be bothered to do that.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's like an hour drive. It's like more than an hour on the freeway, on the highway.
Yeah.
Okay, but how long had you been running when you got pulled?
So my overall time was 20, and 18 of that was moving and running. So because you stop at the checkpoints to have food, and at one of the checkpoints, the halfway, you get to put a drop bag, which was, I arrived at that at like the morning, I think around 8 a.m. So you do a bit of a clothes change. I brushed my teeth because one of the Courtney DeWalter, who's like the female goat of ultra running, that was a tip, which was like, again, if you brush your teeth, it's another notification to your body of going through this rhythm of waking up. It just, all these little things add up. So I'd had like 2 hours overall at the aid stations, having food, coffee, changing clothes, toilet breaks, etc., and moving for 18 hours by the time I got pulled. Yeah.
And how many calories do you consume in these hours?
It's mad. There's formulas. So the pros will use gels because they just want the fastest, quickest, lightest to carry. They also tend to have like crews at aid station who will swap over their water. And for us normal folk, you kind of want to do more real food, because gels, they're fine for like a marathon. Your stomach can handle them and you have to train your stomach to digest gels and actually work to start to use the calories and the energy that you're putting in. And that was one of the biggest training things as well. You have to train your mind, your body, but you also have to train your digestive system, and you have to train eating whilst you're running, because our bodies are normally like, okay, we're eating now, we'll do that. Or, okay, we're exercising now, we'll do that. But you have to train your system to be able to be like, okay, we're still running, so we need to use this and we need to digest it in a way that gets the energy quickly. So it's more like real food. So at the aid stations, it was amazing. It was like homemade cakes, quince, jelly, cheese, crisps, salty nuts. Coca-Cola it's like rocket fuel for ultras because of the caffeine and the sugar. And also, just if you were only taking in gels for 24 hours, that's like if you only ate sweets for 24 hours, at some point, you can't take in just sugar anymore.
Sounds gross, actually.
Yeah. But there is a formula for how much sugar or carbs you need, and how much electrolytes and sodium you need as well, because the hydration is another really big thing, and the sweat. But you can never consume as much as you're burning. You just have to try and consume as much as you can to allow your body to stop running out of fuel.
Jesus Christ. I'm like, I'm in silence because I'm like shocked from all this conversation. Like, Jesus. Okay. Yeah, there's a lot to think about it. But I'm really curious that you mentioned at some point of the story that it was like 50K, you were running 8 hours, and then your lamp dies and you have this mental breakdown, you have your phone and you send a message, a video to, you said your mate. Was it your mate that was running with you, or it was like someone at home? Who was this person? And when I sent this story to Liz, she was like, I wish you could watch that video that you sent.
Oh my God, I'll send it to you. It's ridiculous.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I'll send it to you. It's such a raw and ridiculous like insight into what an ultra is like. So yeah, it was early morning, dawn had just come up, and I was really excited for dawn. Because that guy had told me get through to sunrise and you're gonna get this extra wind and you're gonna feel great. And I was just at the top of the second climb of the volcano, and I was like, oh my God, this is going to be amazing because I'm going to see sunrise over this incredible, beautiful island. And I did not care. I did not care. I was just in this pain hole and cave of just like, what am I doing? My brain had really kicked in at that point of, what are you doing? Like, why are you still moving? What are you doing? And I was lucky because I was surrounded by a few more runners at that point, and I was so grateful. And there was this Swiss guy who had done loads of ultras, and this was essentially a training run for him because he was training for a 770-kilometer ultra, right?
What? 700?
Yeah, crazy effort that is. And I was so grateful for a bit of company and to not feel alone. But equally, it helped me because my competitive spirit kicked in, and I was like, well, it kind of helped counteract my brain being like, we could just stop now, you know, you don't have to do this. And then I was just like, just get to the next station. We'd finish the climb. There was a really nice runnable bit, which was running down this kind of, it was more like a gravel road. So it was really easy on the feet. And I got to the next aid station and my brain just couldn't comprehend it. And I recorded this video and sent it to this group of girls, the ones who were like, I can't even be bothered to drive that far. And I sent them this video. And one of the things I was most blown away by was, even though none of my friends could understand it, they were tracking me live through the night, through the whole race. And every time I turn on my signal, I'd get this flurry of messages like, come on, Walker, like you're smashing it, Aim. And I sent them this video.
We're going to put the video right here. We're going to put the video right here in the podcast. So everybody at home, this is now the video. We're playing it now.
Girls, the fuck am I doing with my life? I'm eating cake. Not even halfway. I don't know if I can do this. It's really hard. It's really cool. How do I do this for another 12 hours? I'm 1 hour ahead of the cutoff at the minute. Fuck me.
Yeah. And it's brilliant because I'm just having this absolute meltdown, and it's totally unfiltered. And at the same time, I'm trying to eat cake. And then after that, one of my friends called me and was like, you've got this, you've got the energy in the tank, you've got this, you come on, like, you look at how far you've come, like and then she would track ahead and would tell me where my friend was and where the other runners were. And actually she told me, and at this time I'd convinced myself that I was so far behind, and I was only like half an hour ahead of the cutoff. And if you don't meet the cutoff at a checkpoint, you get pulled from the race.
Oh, okay.
And I was like, I'm only half an hour ahead. I don't know. And so she gave me a real boost. And then I ended up going on to have the next checkpoint was where I changed my clothes, brushed my teeth, had my first coffee because I put off having a coffee until the morning. So I thought I can use caffeine strategically here. And then I went on to have like the best 30K of my race, where I overtook loads of people. I caught up so much time on the cutoff. I suddenly put myself in a really amazing position to complete it, even if I had to walk a bit at the end, because I bought myself this time. And it was amazing how I went from this low, which you'll see so clearly on the video, to, and this is what I mean, you go from hell to euphoria, to suddenly being like, oh my God, my body is amazing. Look at what we're achieving. I put on some playlists. It was also daytime, even though it was really, really stormy. And I was like so appreciative of nature. And I was just smiling as I was running past people. And I was just having the best time of my life in those 30K. Yeah.
And it's like, but I guess that's the thing that's so cool and amazing about this is you experientially learned that you can be sort of in this like deep trenches of pain and continue with the exact same thing. And then that pain passes and like get to that euphoria. And then that gives you this enormous strength for the rest of your life, right? Because it's like, you can endure.
Yeah. It was something that I've never been able to give myself credit. I've had such a harshly judgmental relationship with myself, and I've always been in punishing mode or fixing mode or proving mode. And something about this was, and I think it's physical and mental, but I think you also have to really want to be there at quite a fundamental level to keep going. And even though it was a crazy decision I made in a random moment with a near stranger, I never had that response of why. It was always, it just felt so aligned. And in those moments, I was able to keep going because I knew the power that it was holding for me. And I knew that I was there for me and was building this whole new relationship with myself. A friend recently asked me why, and it's not even an answer I can rationalize or give you. I can't even intellectualize it. I can't give you this is why I did it. I don't know. It's just something greater than me. It was something within me that needed this challenge, it needed to see us endure and triumph in this new way.
Yeah. There's something that reminds me a bit, I think, for me of my sobriety. I mean, it's like different, obviously, but it's like you made a very deep commitment to finish. And that commitment, nothing can shake that commitment, right? Like feeling like shit doesn't make you suddenly like you're not debating the commitment. Like you're in it. And I think getting to a level like that of deep commitment, I do think there's something almost spiritual, right? Like there's something sort of outside of yourself and it's not fully comprehensible, but it's also, it's one of the most powerful things, I think, to be able to make a commitment at that level for what ends up opening up in your life.
Yeah, I am a little bit curious about that process of being, like before your brother. You mentioned a little bit like, I'm British, I was drinking just because I'm British, but also you mentioned during your story several words that caught my attention, like you decided to choose brightness in a moment that, or in a default mode, that you always choose darkness, that your brain was your first enemy and your bully. Like, who was this Amy growing up in your country or in your town that got to this place?
Yeah, I think it does make me quite sad. I think it's a transformation that I'm still quite deep in. And maybe the part of the process I'm in at the moment is grief, is grieving for my younger self, versions of myself, which can be very painful and confusing because it can also take you back to those thought behaviors. But I think she was just super lost. I've never really given myself the grace or the space to understand and accept who I am and my differences or my uniqueness or my whole self. And I was just making the decisions that felt easy or allowed me to just stay disconnected So whether that's drinking a lot or whether it's taking a job in marketing in London because that's what all my friends are doing, or never really allowing any of my ideas to see the light of day, and essentially, I think my story until very recently is a story of self-abandonment, of escapism, and there's been a building tension, which is the real me, or that part of me that I've abandoned for so long is starting to grow a voice. And that's very painful, but it's very powerful. So my default has always been darkness. I have always tended to focus on the negative, on the lack, on what around me, like judgmentally. I can see the best in everyone else and will do my best to lift them up and support them. But my relationship with myself was such the opposite to that. And I think booking the flight to Lisbon was the beginning of me stepping out of my environment and suddenly having space to start to explore and learn and try a different way. And then what happened with my brother was then such a powerful catalyst for me to make changes around the basics. And this is what I said in the talk, the magic for me really wasn't about the finish line. The magic for me has come in showing up for myself daily, in starting to make decisions. And Liz, without assumption, this feels like it could be a very similar journey to something like sobriety, which is where you suddenly make decisions with a level of intention and a level of compassion that I hadn't before. But it was things like alcohol, the way I started to fuel my body. I've experienced a lot of eating disorders throughout my life. And it's the first time I've developed a really healthy relationship with food and seen it as nourishment instead of a way to punish myself. It's sleep, getting proper sleep, but to help regulate my nervous system, which has just been on a roller coaster that it's been wanting to get off for my entire life. Movement. And then another magical thing about Ultra is it introduced me to trail running. I'd always ran on roads or in cities, but now I'm spending 7-8 hours in nature a week and disconnected. And I've suddenly found this appreciation for myself, which is I notice the details. And that's something really beautiful about myself that I'd never acknowledged or accepted, that because I'd always thought, I waste all this time and energy on the little things when other people are just moving. But actually, it's a really powerful thing that I pay attention to the little things. And every butterfly that I see on my run, I speak to, and I'm like, and I compliment, and I notice the different shapes of the leaves and the colors and the nature. And it's allowed me to see these parts of myself with a new kind of eye. And I've been on medication, I've been through therapy. I feel like I've always been the one that struggled and just lived in fear. And a lot of my decisions have been made by shame. And, and they always, and the more I listen and learn, is none of the medications or the diagnoses really mean too much at my level. There is definitely another level of sickness whereby, of course, but at my level, I didn't have foundations in place. So it was like, if you're not coming from a place of solid foundations, you can't then build on that. And that's what it's allowing me to do on a daily basis.
I mean, it's an amazing transformation and it's an exciting one. And yeah, you can't abandon yourself when you're like doing an ultra marathon. Well, I guess you can quit.
Yeah.
That's what I would do. But you did not. And you proved to yourself that you did that. And that is just amazing. And I think now it's probably a good time to wrap things up. And we just end with a final question, which is, what was it like for you to revisit your story today?
Really exciting. I feel really grateful whenever anyone wants to listen because I do still worry about taking up that space and talking about something that doesn't mean anything to other people. So I'm really grateful for you guys reaching out and wanting to have this conversation. It's something that was so meaningful. And as time goes by, as with everything, it becomes more of a memory. And I was so excited to bring it back to the surface and make it really visceral and tangible and relive the pride and the gratitude and the hilariousness of it all. And it's just another reminder, like, we're on this new path. It's good to say that out loud. And it's a real boost for me to keep going because I'm excited by where this is taking me.
That's it for this episode of What Lingers.
If you enjoyed it, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast. It really helps us reach more listeners. And if someone came to mind while you were listening, we'd love for you to share this episode with them.
What Lingers is a podcast from the team behind Storytelling Lisboa and is produced by both Liz and I and edited by Liz.
We're a small project and your support truly motivates us to keep going.
Would also love to hear from you. Feel free to send us a DM or even a voice note with your thoughts, your comments, or questions to our Instagram @WhatLingersPod.
Don't forget to subscribe and follow us so you never miss what lingers next.
Bye!
Bye!